Hello, everyone, and welcome again to Mastering Dungeons. Thanks for checking in with us for another week, and thank you, Teos, for coming on to speak with me. I know each week gets more and more difficult to put up with me, but you are hanging in there.
I like that as a humor point, but the reality is that, I think I tweeted about it 2 days ago. I was like, why is it not Monday? Like, come on. Like, why can't we just record every day? And I seriously have some days been like, what if we did record another episode? so this is fun time. I love this.
Yeah, well, we could be flexible. We could be flexible. If you're jonesing to record, just let me know, and we'll move it up a day or so.
And then one day when the lost episodes are found.
That's right. Well, part of the reason I know that I wanted to record earlier this week was that there was so much news happening, and it just kept coming and kept coming and kept coming. So with that, we are going to get into a very heavy news segment for this week. The first being the new book was announced.
It was called just as we predicted, right? We said it was going to be Dragon Jammer Feywild. And it wasn't.
And it wasn't. It was, of all things, a book called Candlekeep Mysteries. This will go on sale March 16th, and it's already available for pre-order on places like D&D Beyond, Roll20, Fantasy Grounds, etc. It is an anthology of 17 mystery-themed adventures covering levels 1 to 16. Each adventure begins with the discovery of a book, and each book is the key to a door leading to adventure. So you can use them to run either short one-shot games, or you can plug it into a larger campaign. So, Teos, what do you feel about this, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, this is cool. I mean, you and I have had the pleasure of working on Candlekeep. We did it during the D&D Next days. We created a convention adventure all around Candlekeep, and it is a cool location. Yeah. I like this premise of sort of a book, right? Because that leans into what the place is. I'm excited to see what all these different creators did. And the creators, it's a huge, diverse group that seems to be like you must have a Twitter account to be on this list.
Right.
Or streaming or something like that. That's not 100% true. I think there may be a person that doesn't have a Twitter account, but there are. It is just. Graham Barber, Kelly Lynn D'Angelo, Allison Huang, Mark Humes, Jennifer Kretschmer, Daniel Kwan, Adam Lee, Ari Levitch, Sarah Madsen, Christopher Perkins. That guy's new. Michael Polkenhorn, Taymur Remen, who now works at D&D, Derek Ruiz, Kiana Shaw, Brand Stoddard. Very cool to see his name there. Amy Vorpal. And Tony Winslow Brill, we know her.
Yep.
Really neat. Just a ton of people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and what you get then from this book is not just 17 different mini adventures, but you get 17 pretty diverse adventures. So among them, there's probably something that is going to tickle your fancy or the fancy of your players if you're the DM. And it is an interesting location, first of all. It's one of those locations that's sort of always been around in the Forgotten Realms lore. And thanks to the video game, Baldur's Gate.
Baldur's Gate, yeah.
Right. That's where it starts. So it holds a place in many people's fondness for the Forgotten Realms. But you don't see a lot of adventure there. And when we were working on our project, we basically came to the realization that it was essentially unmappable.
Yeah, and nothing really there were things that happened there, and there were books that described it, but very few details, which was interesting.
Right. So it will be interesting to see how they handle the actual place itself. They are going to include a poster map of the library fortress, but there are levels beneath. There are different areas that are probably supernatural or multiplanar. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
I also can't help but think of when we did our project, we were fortunate enough to talk to Ed Greenwood a bit. Greg Bilson, the then project manager, he brought Ed in. And when we talked to Ed talked about, this is one of these places that has been touched by a lot of designers, and they've just done their thing, kind of quote unquote, without, he didn't say this, but like without checking with him, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so they had said things like, it's a forest of countless towers, for example. And he's like, how would you have sages that didn't actually know how many towers there are? And so there were some neat pieces there. And so I'm curious, what will these new writers add to the lore of Candlekeep, and how will it transmute further?
Yeah, it's fun to see that that transition in a shared world over time, based on the people that work on it and the game itself, how that makes forces changes within the design and development of material. And you wanted to make a note about Derek Ruiz, yes?
Yeah, so he's known on Twitter as Elven Tower, and what he does regularly that you see him doing is he creates maps, and he creates a lot of the maps for Sly Flourish, for Mike Shea's books. He creates map packages where there's a map and an adventure. And it's neat to see it because there are very few Latinos who have worked on D&D, despite the fact that, I mean, I grew up playing in Colombia, and there are people all over Latin America that play, but you see very few designers. And so seeing Derek Reeves or Elven Tower on there, that was a lot of fun for me to see that.
Yep. So it will be interesting again to see what the final product looks like, and we will know in March. Cool. Next big news, D&D movie. Puh, who needs a D&D movie? There is now a D&D TV show in development. According to various sources, Derek Kolstad, the creator and writer behind the John Wick franchise, some of you may have heard of that, has been tapped to pen and develop a pitch for a live-action series based on the Dungeons & Dragons universe. Kolstad is also the writer in the upcoming Marvel TV series, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Not bad.
So if I have a choice between a D&D movie and a D&D series TV show, give me the TV show.
Sure.
99 times out of 100. So this is very exciting for me. And I don't have much else to say except, lots of shows go into maybe development, but until they're, filming, until there's on the schedule, I never hold my breath too much.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we had not heard, the TV show is relatively new news. We heard it was sort of mentioned in the Hasbro earnings report, like a month ago or something. We reported on this, but now we see that they're moving with some speed. And this E1 group, which is the Hasbro entertainment arm, is doing both the movie and this TV show. And it feels like they're getting going, right? Like it's post.
Right.
They've figured out how to work with the pandemic. And so now they know how to do isolation, how to film, how to get everybody together and shoot these movies safely and TV shows. And so now it feels like this engine is there. They said that this would be out next year. So we'll see. I don't know that will really happen, but it at least, it's not, I don't think it's going to be 5 years from now. I think it's soonish.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's beyond just the rumor stage at this point with, so-and-so has talked about possibly, they are in pre-production. They are working toward an end, which is refreshing and reassuring to me.
Yep. And it's also neat to see all of these places, Hollywood Reporter, any of these big sort of media coverings places all talking about D&D, which can only do us good, right? For the whole RPG community.
Yep. And speaking of large-scale media talking about D&D, the LA Times has a story where they interviewed Liz Shue, who's the head of publishing and licensing for D&D, saying that revenue was up 35% in 2020 compared to 2019. That's the 7th consecutive year of growth. 35%, when you think of it, just as a random number, doesn't seem like a lot. But when you consider 7 years of consecutive growth, if you maintain your profit as a company or maintain your revenue as a company, that's often a good thing. So to be up 35% is huge.
And profit wise, one suspects their profit has not changed substantially. And so it probably really is close to whatever profit increase is, because it's not like they're hiring 1 billion people. They're hiring a few more people. They aren't making vastly more books, right? They're just printing more copies of them. So this looks really good. The other really
Yeah.
interesting tidbit here is, one wonders where these numbers come from, but Shu says that in 2020, virtual play rose 86%. And that's not clear if she means just D&D, or is that like a number pulled from YouTube and Twitch, but it's still either way, like virtual play up 86%. With the pandemic, I certainly believe it.
Right, but still 86% is almost double. So that's really amazing. Moving on from the business side to the new offering side, a new monthly magazine from MCDM is out, and it is called ARCADIA. You want to give us the scoop on that, Teos?
Yeah, we had talked about this back when it was kind of a twinkle in their eye. I think Matt Colville said something like, we want to make something that doesn't suck, and he had his typical down to earth way of talking about it. He hired managing editor James Intercasso, friend of the show. We bow before James, and James has been working with a team of both freelancers and their own inside amazing team at MCDM to create a magazine, and it feels a lot like a combination of the old Dungeon and Dragon magazine. Their target is to have 3 articles each month, though this one has 4, and one of the upcoming months will also have 4. And they run the gamut from adventures to it can be subclasses. Really exciting stuff, really well made, beautiful. The art is great, the layout is great, looks fantastic. And you get it for just $5 or $10, either level that's on the MCDM Patreon. Which is how Matt Colville sort of was like, we need to do something for our Patreon subscribers. What do we do? And this is what they came up with. And if it works, we'll keep doing it. And if you don't want to do the Patreon, you can just buy individual issues for $7 on the MCDM store. And they probably will bundle them at some point, I think they said. And what I love about this, they're going to do, I think, 3 issues. I think they're doing like a quarter's worth. And then they're going to pause and look at this. And what they like about the Patreon model is they can be collating all the feedback from everybody to then come up with how to refine it. And I love the intelligence of how MCDM operates. Plus, they pay people well. They pay freelancers well. It's great. And do you want to talk about what's in this issue?
Yeah, so in this issue of the 4 articles, these are how they break down. One is called The Workshop Watches from Leon Barillo. And it is a short adventure for 5th level PCs that feature a sentient magician's workshop. Love that right off the bat. You want some rules? We have new sorcerer subclasses from Gabe Hicks in the article called Titan Heart. They have the blood of Titans in their veins, and it includes a sample NPC and a retainer. So good stuff there. You want a little bit of sort of the rules aspect of the game. We'll talk about Jumping on Mounted Combat by Willie Abiel. New rules for taming monsters and then riding them. So there is a mount version for 6 existing creatures. And finally, I don't know how to pronounce this, so I'm going to do my best. Ukaviel, the Recreant by Sadie Lowry, where you get 2 high CR celestial fallen angel enemies to use in your game. So you've got something for players, something for DMs, an adventure, some new rules to work with. A great first offering, a great way to come out of the gate and put down your stake as, okay, we're going to be the ones that take up the mantle of a monthly D&D magazine.
I love it. I also think it's really smart because it's a way that James knows people in the industry, but this is a way that MCDM can also be working with freelance talent and sort of qualify them for bigger projects because, they want to be creating a lot of bigger things like their Kingdom and Warfare type books. So this is a great way to just stay connected and build an army of freelancers that's loyal to them. I've freelanced for them. I love working with MCDM. They're a great outfit. This is a great magazine. I've looked through all of it, and then I've closely read the Workshop Watches, that adventure. It's a super fun adventure, just top notch, like the kind you just want to pull out and run at a convention, right? A go-to excellent short adventure, really fun.
Yeah, well, I mean, James has his finger on the pulse of not just the industry, but of good development, good design.
Yeah.
So that right coming out of the gate that they're going to have sort of the best of the best right up front. and I think that shows in all of these articles that are there. So let's go from Arcadia to Wizards of the Coast itself. Wizards of the Coast hired Makenzie the Armas as the new associate game designer. So again, more jobs, more freelancers becoming full-time employees, and this is exciting. You want to talk for just a second about that, because you had some good thoughts?
Yeah, she's highly regarded in our field, and what I love is Makenzie started playing in 2018. That's when she first played D&D. And it just shows the meteoric rise that is possible for someone if you do good, hard work, and if you're a good person and people appreciate working with you. And it also shows how playing for decades isn't necessarily an edge in the industry. Certainly not the way it once was, if it even is at all. She's known for working on the islands of Sina Una, which is based on Philippine mythology. She co-designed Kingdoms in Warfare with MCDM, written D&D Beyond articles, DM's Guild work, Wizards of the Coast freelancing, and then a bunch of online conventions and physical convention panel organization and other activities like that. So just someone who's just been pouring herself into this, and now she's associate game designer. A great choice, really cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, experience can be great, but it can also be a stumbling block, depending on if you're clinging to things that aren't useful or helpful in the game now.
Yeah.
So, I love to see. Well, let's talk about the next bit of news, which shows that sometimes experience does pay.
That's true.
Which is the Kobold Press hiring a new editorial director, Thomas M. Reid. So Thomas worked for TSR. He worked for WotC. He worked for video game companies. And so now he has been hired as the new editorial director. The old editorial director went to work for Wizards.
That's right.
So moving on up, and I'm looking forward to what's coming from Kobold Press, because they have announced not just their new editorial director, but also an alliance with an upcoming virtual tabletop called Shard Tabletop, which will be kickstarting in about a week or so. And so they're going to have their open gaming license and Kobold Press content on that platform, everything from monsters to adventures.
Yeah, and Mike Shea also tweeted on Sunday that his content, Lazy DM or Fantastic Adventures, will be coming to Shard Tabletop as well. So that'll be interesting to watch, not only Kobold Press's involvement, but how this new virtual tabletop does.
Mm-hmm. And it's great to have that competition within the industry.
Absolutely.
So now it's not just Roll20 and Fantasy Grounds. Now it's, let's bring another group in. Let's see what they can do, and hopefully all ships will rise with this rising tide.
Yeah, and you have to always wonder. I mean, D&D Beyond has seemed to indicate that they're going to do something with virtual tabletops, and then D&D has had those very interesting survey questions about playing online that makes you wonder whether Wizards is going to do something or partner with someone. That's super interesting.
Right. So. I mean, the virtual tabletop that they were planning for 4th edition looked great.
Right? It did look great.
Until you actually had to make it.
I played 2 games on it. It was so strange how they eventually released it, but with such limited support, and then they just shelved it after a while. It was really bizarre, but well.
So sticking with Kobold Press, but sort of changing gears into organized play, Kobold Press has announced Interpolation. Is that how you pronounce that? Interpolation? Yeah. All right. Now, I'm trying to think. Yes. The first of 6 adventures in the Midgard Chronicles Living campaign. So they are partnering with a group called Warduke Press to create a Midgard Chronicles Living campaign. So we've seen living campaigns sort of try to bust through and become this, as robust as something like the Adventurers League, or for Pathfinder, the Pathfinder Chronicles sort of living campaign. Now, Warduke Press, I believe, were the ones that were behind the successor to Living Greyhawk, called Greyhawk Reborn. And so they did make some inroads, but they were more local, local areas where you could go to conventions and play their stuff. So it'll be interesting to see how they work with Kobold Press and what they can come up with.
Yeah, very interesting. They certainly understand organized play, given that they've worked on this Greyhawk Reborn campaign. But that has to be limited because of the IP and how they can do it.
Right.
So it'll be cool to see how they take all of that learning they've had of having done that for years and work on this. It's very cool. I don't think, to be successful for a company, an organized play program does not need to be Adventurers League. I mean, it almost can't be.
Right. Sure.
It just needs to be a rallying point for players and GMs to come together and to create a sense of story and help the audience focus in on the intellectual property that takes place, in your game. And if it does that, it's a massive success. And it can even go away after a while. But having existed creates just a group of kind of allied, united people who understand and enjoy the game. And that's exactly what we want.
Yep. So lots happening at Kobold Press. And we have another hire for a full-time game design job, and that is Celeste Conowitch, who was hired at 2C Gaming. Celeste has been a streamer, a freelance designer, and she's I know from experience, because I've worked with her on a few projects, very, very, very busy with in that role as a full-time game designer. And now she gets to take that expertise to 2C Gaming. 2C Gaming has had 15 Kickstarters up to this point. So there's definitely some work to be done with them. And so, good luck, Celeste. We're very happy for you and hope everything goes well for you and with 2C.
And she had announced that she was working on the current Kickstarter they have, this Tome of Titans. So it's interesting to see that now, full time. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. And another designer, freelancer, has left a job, but we don't know where he's going, and that's James Hake. So James worked as the main content provider, content manager for D&D Beyond. So all the great articles that you would read on D&D Beyond, he either wrote them or helped them come to fruition. And he announced on D&D Beyond that he would be leaving for other projects. He did not say what those projects were, but with the way that the industry is going, I would assume that it is for something in the realm of a full-time job.
Well, you'd be surprised. Actually, I just talked to James this morning, and it's just farming. He's going to be a farmer.
Really? Hey, we certainly he doesn't live in Portland, right? I mean, that would
no, actually, okay. I mean, I'm sure he'll do a little animal husbandry. He's the kind of guy who likes more than one project at once. So I can see chickens in his future. Okay. Garbanzo beans. I could be wrong. This may not be.
Yeah. It was just third-hand knowledge, even though you got it straight from James.
It was straight from James, but by a friend. So
okay.
He might not be a farmer now, but so I don't know, a school teacher maybe.
Well, James, wherever you go, we hope we can see more of your great work.
Yeah, and if you have a guess as to what James is up to, send us a tweet.
Yes, for sure. So now back into the non-virtual world, Origins, the convention taking place in Columbus, Ohio, has set tentative dates for an actual in-person live convention mixed with online play as well. So they will stream some of it will be in person, or so they think.
Yep.
They are opening hotel blocks on June 1st. And they're going to have badge registration June 5th. I hope that it is possible by that point to safely do things. I certainly have my doubts that we will be in that position by that time. But, hey, here's hoping.
Yeah, the hardest part is, they're going to have hotel block open on June 1st, badge registration June 5th. It's hard to imagine that in June we're going to be in a position where we want to sign up for this, right? That we really feel the vaccine has worked its way through. And so I don't know. It seems hopeful, but we'll see how it goes. And boy, it would be wonderful if it did.
Yep. So, if you are someone who wants to sit at a table in close proximity with several people playing a game, and use can safely, hey, good luck. We'll be with you in spirit.
For sure.
And speaking of the D&D Adventurers League, they have several new releases for the Rime of the Frost Maiden Adventures. 10-2 and 10-3 are now up on the DM's Guild. 10-2 is Gnashing Teeth by Laura Thompson, and 10-3 is Divining Evil by Tim Mottishaw.
Yeah, really cool. Two amazing people, Laura Thompson, GM Tim. Just fantastic. Love seeing their work. I was part of the play testing for Divining Evil. There's some really great scenes in that adventure, so both are great to pick up.
Yep. And on the Oracle of War side of the Adventurers League, you can get the final Tier 2 adventure called Judgment of Iron by Richard Green, as well as the Tier 2 epic, where you can infiltrate a lightning rail train. So awesome. I know that Will and Tony Portrius have been working on that, or have worked on that extensively, and it should be quite a ride. And if you are into, yes, exactly. If you are into Tier 3, you can now get some of the Tier 3 adventures. EB11 is My Undying Heart by Tom Evhelm Donovan. And EB12 is called The Waiting Game by some hack who I can't believe they let actually write.
By Sean Merwin. Woo!
So you can check those out on the DM's Guild.
Yeah, I mean,
speaking of the...
I've talked about how much I love the Oracle of War campaign. It's great. This is a campaign that everybody should pick up. If all you do is read it because it'll inspire you, that's great times. But this is a lot of fun. I've been running these, and they're just fantastic.
Yeah, Will showed what you can do if you have a little bit of lead time and an incredibly gifted mind for storytelling. He really outdid himself with that. And the best is yet to come. Speaking of the DM's Guild, you can now follow an author. And I did not know this, Teos. I did not know this. So tell us about this.
Yeah, so this is something that people had asked for, creators had asked for a long time, in that normally if you're like on drive-through, and you buy a product from, let's say, Kobold Press, you can, when you buy it, say, I want to follow Kobold Press, and then you get an email telling you whenever Kobold Press creates a new thing. But on the DM's Guild, the author is DM's Guild. So you can't follow Shawn or Teos or Celeste or anyone else. You just have to, watch Twitter or something to know when someone has published something. But now they've subdivided it if the author does this. And so authors, if you write for the DM's Guild, this is the thing you must do. You must go to your settings and enable your name to be displayed and followed. So there's a checkbox that goes out under the settings. If anyone can't find it, send me a tweet. I'll look it up, the exact location. But you go through the process, and you do that. And now, whenever anybody looks at your product, when they're looking at the product page, over on the left side, they will see a follow your favorite section. That's always been there, but now the author name will be there, and you can click a little checkbox, and you can follow that author. So you can follow your favorite creators and then be notified when they create something new.
And I went through this after I saw these notes, and it is not easy to find. You have to kind of search around for a minute, and it's not default. Your name is not there, or at least my name was not there by default. I had to actually go in and type out my first and last name.
Yes,
because that was what was added to the screen that allows them now to do this. So you'll definitely have to do it. And if you're an Adventurers League author, unfortunately, since they upload the adventure, it's not going to be put in under your name. It will be put in under Adventurers League. Yeah. And just the last bit of news, since we were talking about Celeste, and before we get into Rime of the Frost Maiden, the Venture Maidens is now running through the adventure Rime of the Frost Maiden, and this is Celeste Conowitch's group that stream. And since she helped write Rime of the Frost Maiden, it's very interesting to see how an author of a work or someone who contributed to a larger work runs their group through it.
Yeah, very cool. I've watched. She has 3 episodes up and the slot 0 or session 0, And so it's neat to see how they build the characters and handle secrets. And then they go into Care Koenig is where they choose as a starting part, and they follow that. If you, I don't want to do spoilers in this part, but they follow that logical type of monster that's involved in that quest, and they follow that storyline on through in later episodes. So it's one of the things we'd said, well, you could go along this track, and they certainly are doing that, which is cool to see her do.
Nice. So that was a very long opening for news. So we are going to get now right into our review of Tasha's by looking at the last two subclasses for the Druid, the Circle of Stars and the Circle of Wildfire. So Circle of Stars. This is interesting. I like this so much that the campaign that I'm playing in, my Druid just became second level, and this is the subclass I chose. So I will be able to tell you about it in gory detail if we advance in levels at all. So at level 2, your first thing you get is called the star map. So you get a tiny star map, and you can choose its form or roll for its form. And as Teos said, no flumps were harmed during the creation of the star map, although perhaps an owlbear was.
Yeah, there is one that's the hide of an owlbear.
Yep, which is okay.
Yep.
So this map also doubles as your spellcasting focus, and while you're holding it, you know the guidance cantrip, and you know guiding bolt, and you can also cast guiding bolt without expending a spell slot. And
a number of times equal to proficiency bonus.
Yep. And then you regain all expended uses with a long rest. And, this is something that I used right away when I was playing my second level Druid, because it's a great spell, but it's that spell that if you hit or, if you miss, you're wasting that valuable at low level, that valuable slot. This lets you do it a few times without having to worry about using that spell slot. So it's great.
And as a Druid, it's so fun.
Yeah, and if you lose your map, you can perform a ritual for 1 hour to get it back. Mm-hmm. Any thoughts there?
I mean, it's strong. It's really strong. Guiding bolt several extra times that's a big deal. That's a nice, instead of a cantrip, cast guiding bolt 2-3 times a day at your early levels. That's wow.
It's no joke. Yeah, no. It's nice. So at level 2, you also get Starry Form. So as a bonus action, you use one of your wild shapes to gain your Starry Form. While you're in this form, you shed bright light within a 10-foot radius and dim light for an additional 10 feet. This form lasts for 10 minutes, and you can end it early if you dismiss it as no action, if you're incapacitated, if you die, or if you use this feature again. And then you also, in the Starry Form, get to choose one of the following as constellations glimmer on your body. So these are 3 interesting choices. The first is called the Archer. So as a bonus action for 1d8 plus wisdom range spell attack up to 60 feet. So you get this ranged 60-foot spell attack. Very nice. That's a decent bonus action.
Yeah.
You can take the form of the Chalice. So when you cast a spell that restores hit points to a creature, you or another creature within 30 feet of you also regains hit points equal to 1d8 plus your wisdom modifier. So it's kind of like an extra cure wounds thrown out there.
And it's no action.
It's no action to do that. So the action is casting the original spell, and then you get to do this as for free. Yeah. So it's very nice. And then the last form is the Dragon. When you make an intelligence or a wisdom check or a constitution saving throw to maintain concentration on a spell, you can treat a roll of 9 or lower as a 10 on the d20. And that's important for druids because so many druid spells require concentration that it's something that keeps druids from having to go through too many spell slots if you play a longer sort of series of encounters. So I'm happy with that as well.
I also love this is, I say this kind of anytime I get a chance to say so, that my favorite design ever is the Hunter Ranger from the Essentials 4E, which gave you options that you could use based on your tactics and the way you enjoy D&D. But they weren't crazy complicated. And this is a great example where these 3 are not overly complicated, but they have a little tactical edge to them, and the choice is tactical, but you're not bogging down play.
Right.
Love this. Just love
Yep.
it.
I couldn't have said that any better. The choice is tactical, but the mechanics are simple. And I love that as well. So at level 6, you get Cosmic Omen. Whenever you finish a long rest, you can consult your star map for omens. You can do this a number of times equal to your proficiency bonus, and it refresh after a long rest. So you roll a die, and you gain access to a special reaction based on that die roll, whether it's even or odd. If it's even, it's wheel. And whenever a creature you can see within 30 feet of you is about to make an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check, you can add a d6 to that roll for them. If it's odd, it's woe, and it's the same thing except you're doing the opposite. You're taking a d6 away from an attack roll, saving throw, or ability check. What's important here is when you have to make that decision of when to give the d6.
Yeah,
Right?
it's before they make the roll.
Yep.
Not when you see the result on the die or when the DM tells you what happened. It's before. It's when they're gonna do a check. That makes it less powerful. You can't subtract after the fact or add after the fact. And it's a limited number of uses a day. It's your proficiency bonus, but that's still neat. So it's a nice bonus. It's not a game breaker, which I like.
Yep. And then when you get to level 10, you get Twinkling Constellations. The constellations of your starry form improve. The D8 from the Archer and the Chalice becomes 2D8. And while you're in the Dragon constellation, when that's active, you have a fly speed of 20 feet and you can hover. And I love this. I love taking something that's already there, not overcomplicating it anymore, just giving it a little bit more oomph. At the start of each of your turns while you're in starry form, you can change the constellation that's glimmering on your body. So it's less flexible at lower levels. When you choose it, that's the only thing you can do. Here, you can change it every round. So now
cool.
it's now it's at level 10, you've got that more control, and you can bring up the constellation that's most appropriate for you at the time. And at level 14, you get Full of Stars. While you're in your starry form, you become partially incorporeal, giving you resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage.
So it's simple. I like that part of it. It's a little weird because this feels like a ranged class. I mean, it's fine. People still going to chase you down and beat you up, but it's not a particularly strong feature due to the fact that you're going to be avoiding combat. You're a ranged character, but it's fine.
Yep. And it's simple. And one thing I thought was, this shows how much magic items can unbalance a game, right? Because I'm sure there are magic items out there that people can find that do this, that give you resistance to damage. And, it was just a random passing thought as I was reading that, these features become less important the more magic items you have in your game.
True.
And for me, it's just one more reason to limit magic items, to make these things more cool rather than, I have this armor that always does this. So,
and that's, I always think back, I don't want to get too sidetracked on this, but Mike Merles talked about during 4th edition how they almost did away with magic items or made them vastly different than ever before. And, 4E got dinged for being different, but I wish they had experimented with that so that we just would have been able to see for several years what it would be like to have a completely different model for magic items. And I say that because I think that if magic items were less of this always on, which came into our brains, this, it's a +1 sword, it's always +1, and was more about a give a take or a choice or every now and then, I think that would be better. Because when I look at campaigns I run and I think what were the memorable magic items, it's never that stuff, and it's always things like an alchemy jug or a rope of climbing or entanglement. It's using things in fun moments. The robe that of useful items, right? It's crazy things like that that are fun and make it interesting. Not having a resistance always through some armor or badge or something.
Yep. Yeah. So overall, like I said, I love this so much that I bought it.
It might be my next subclass too. I liked it a lot too.
Yeah,
This is great.
yeah. So I will see how it plays as levels rise. The other subclass is the Circle of Wildfire. This one is about destruction, being a precursor to creation, such as wildfires causing growth in the long run. So the druid bonds with a primal spirit that harbors both creative and destructive powers. And my immediate thought was the shaman. What was the class where you got
all the spirits and
the spirits?
4E.
4A. Yep.
Super complicated, but I really enjoyed
yes. So we'll see if that follows through. When I read that, at level 2, you get circle spells. These spells all have the theme of fire or healing.
I felt like this actually was a subclass that could have been in a one of the Magic the Gathering setting books, like Ravnica or Theros, because it feels like a red-white Magic deck. Attack, heal, right? It really felt the spells are all like either healing or fire.
Yep. And so at level 2, speaking of healing or fire, you get to summon a wildfire spirit. So it's an action to summon the spirit to a place you can see within 30 feet. Each creature within 10 feet of the spirit, when it appears, other than you, must succeed on a dexterity saving throw against your spell DC or take 2d6 fire damage. So that's pretty beefy right there.
Yeah.
Because you could basically place a little mini fireball anywhere you want on the map when it comes in. The stat block, so there's a stat block for this spirit. It uses your proficiency bonus, and you determine the appearance. And I like that they have that stat block in there.
Yeah.
It's the same for everybody. It's the same for everything. Everything you need is right there. Plop it down and go. The spirit takes the dodge.
I wonder whether Dan Dillon made these changes because it's kind of conversations that he's had and others have had around how we wish that early 5e had done this. The core 5e had sort of had this approach of just give us a stat block and evolve that stat block and let us change the appearance. And I love that. It can be whatever fire creature I want, but I've got rules to unite it. So I'm not looking up a fire bear or a fire, whatever creature, spider, whatever. It's just one stat block and it evolves. It's great.
Yep. The spirit has an AC of 15, hit points equal to 5, plus 5 times your druid level, speed of 30, fly speed of 30, dark vision 60 feet. It has a flame seed action that is a 60-foot ranged attack that uses your spell attack and deals 1d6 plus
proficiency bonus.
Thank you. Proficiency bonus fire damage. It also has fiery teleportation as an action. The spirit and each willing creature of your choice within 5 feet of it teleport up to 15 feet to unoccupied spaces you can see. Then each creature within the 5-foot space that the spirit left must succeed on a dexterity saving throw or take 1d6 plus proficiency bonus fire damage. Again, I'm not so keen on the teleportation part of things, especially at second level, but yeah, it's an interesting tactical choice.
It does bog things down a bit. It's also interesting that usually it's like you must move everybody together, but the way it says this, each creature can sort of choose where they are teleporting to.
Yeah.
So you just sort of redistribute within 15, and then you kind of firebomb the area left. But there's a lot of damage you can dish out through this thing. It is vulnerable with its AC 13, and its hit points aren't, but its hit points aren't inconsequential. So yeah, it's interesting. I'd love to see this in play. I'm not a huge fan, as I've said, of summoning things because I feel like it's stronger than it should be just by virtue of putting another thing on the table. Sure. But I do like the way this works. It's super fun. Like you just want to play with this thing.
Yep. So at level 6, you get Enhanced Bond. So when you cast a spell that deals fire damage or restores hit points while your wildfire spirit is summoned, you roll a d8 and you gain a bonus equal to that number to 1 damage or 1 healing roll of the spell. Again, we're treading here now on a few too many clauses, a few too many things. So it's while your creature is that bonded, and then you can do it. You get a bonus to the damage on a spell, a fire spell, or the restoration of hit points. And this is where I begin to think, okay, they're taking that old 4E thing, and they're trying to 5E it. right?
Yeah.
Because back then it was if your summoned ally, your companion, whatever they call it, your spirit was next to a creature, you could do more damage to it or heal it for more or something like that. I get it. It's not over the line, but for me, it's creeping up to that line of one too many things.
I also feel like we're maybe trying to damage like the most damaging classes, because this is not inconsequential. I use a fire cantrip which probably does 2d8 at this level 6. Then I do a bonus d8 because of this feature, and then my spirit is attacking for 1d6 plus 3. I mean, that's kind of like ranger level damage. Like, this is not inconsequential damage. It's pretty close to what your good strong damage dealers are dealing, and this is just your every round stuff.
Right.
And then you can actually do not just a fire cantrip, but you could do a bigger fire spell, or something else that's a strong spell, an area attack or whatever. So yeah, it's kind of impressive to see a couple of these subclasses that consistently dish out much stronger damage than normal. And it does worry me, because what I see is people that play, when I play these kinds of games, like say with an artificer, right? And the cannon attacks and then the character attacks, and that damage together is stronger than the rogue. And the rogue's kind of like, what did I do wrong? I'm supposed to be the damage dealing class, right?
Yeah. It is. It does hint a little bit at that sort of power creep.
Yeah.
In addition, when you cast a spell with a range other than the self, the spell can originate from you or from your wildfire spirit. Yep. Okay. So at level 10, Cauterizing Flames. So here we go.
Here we go.
When a small or larger creature dies within 30 feet of you or your wildfire spirit, a harmless spectral flame springs forth in the dead creature's space and flickers there for 1 minute. When a creature you can see enters that space, you can use your reaction to extinguish the spectral flame and either heal the creature or deal fire damage to it. That healing or damage is equal to 2d10 plus your wisdom modifier. It's cool.
Wait, let's add the other part. You can use this reaction
a
number of times equal to your proficiency bonus.
Go ahead.
And then you get it all back with the long rest.
Yeah, I love the flavor of it. I think it's fun. I think it's thematic. But now you've got your spirit that you're keeping track of. Now you've got yourself that you're keeping track of. And now there's this flame that you have to keep track of. And again, if you're running a super tactical campaign and you are a super organized player, not a problem at all. If you get into situations where, well, there's the flame there, well, try to push the enemy into it. No, I need the healing. Let me run into it. You start getting into these tactical discussions that can really slow a game down.
My reason for absolutely horribly disliking this, I'll just be honest, I really dislike this because it's sort of unworkable. If I'm playing theater of the mind, or I'm kind of loose, using zones or whatever, then I don't know where these spaces are. And now it becomes completely up to the DM to decide whether a creature has walked through a space with a dead body in it or not. Unless your allies, it's a little easier, but for the damage part, it's very difficult did you go through the body? And and then as a DM, you're in this weird position of having to reward the player or not. It's really weird. And I think in general, logically, creatures would not walk in a space with a body in it, even though we know that they fit in the 5 feet. They'll probably just go around because you can. The way movement works, you can just avoid those spaces. Why go through a body space? You just would avoid it. The other thing is that if you're playing with a battle map, where theoretically it's easy to track this, you must now track this for every single body that dies ever, even though this is only going to be used proficiency bonus of times as a reaction, which may mean not at all in a combat. Right? But every time a creature dies, I got to put a thing down. And what is my thing? Because if my thing is a turned over mini, no one's walking in that square. They're going to go around the down mini. So you'd have to have a little flat token that you put down on each dead body to remember. What? No. I dislike that all very strongly.
Right. It could just as easily have said, as a reaction when a creature dies within 30 feet of you.
Yes.
take the 2d10 healing, take the 2d10 damage, have it happen right away, and be done with it.
It's the entering the space was completely unnecessary design to have here. And if you want to run this, if a player's choosing this as a DM, I would say, or as a player have this conversation, just get rid of that enters the space, because nobody wants to track this. Nobody wants the gotcha of it. Just give the effect,
Yeah. And I know players that would love that, right? They're going to love because they're very tactical. They're very on the map, and they want to have these pitfalls or these honeypots on the map that bring them, that they want to get to or that they want to get away from, and it's part of the chess match of play for them. So I get why some people would like that, and it's fine if you do. I think overall it might not be the best for all D&D players.
And there have been classes that set traps that are invisible to people that can then be triggered, or that are obvious, but I think you have to design for that. And in this case, the design, you're not putting down a trap. It's that when a creature dies, you may or may not do this.
Mm-hmm.
And for proficiency bonus times, this is not worth the work, right?
Right.
It would be different if you were setting down a deliberate healing spot or a deliberate attack spot, and that was what you did. But you're not doing it. It's a thing that just happens every single time someone dies, and that's just too much to track.
Yep. So at 14th level, there is Blazing Revival. If the spirit is within 120 feet of you when you are reduced to 0 hit points and thereby fall unconscious, you can cause the spirit to drop to 0 hit points, and then you regain half your hit points and immediately rise to your feet. Once you use this feature, you can't use it again until you finish a long rest. Cool. I'm all down with that. That is thematically, it makes sense. The spirit heals you. You get right back up. The spirit goes away. Easy to keep track of. Easy to adjudicate at the table.
Yeah, I think the only question here is what happens if both you and the spirit are brought to 0 hit points?
At the same time.
I would probably still allow it.
Yeah.
But, I mean, per the wording, it maybe shouldn't work. But the spirit is weak enough in terms of its hit points that if you are dying, it might also be dying. And it doesn't quite address that situation.
Yeah. And that's also another summoned creature problem, right? With so many creatures on the board at once and so many taking damage. Yeah, it's a thing. Yeah. So we have gotten through druids, and next time we will move on to the next subclasses. What comes after druid? Is it fighter?
Yes.
D-E-F. Yes, fighter. Excellent. But we need to talk about the 3 forms of Auriel.
Woo!
And finish up
spoiler time
once and for all chapter 5. So yes, if you are a player and you do not want to be spoiled on Rime of the Frostmaiden, thank you for listening. For those of you in for the long haul, we're going to just discuss very briefly the end of chapter 5 when you have to fight Auriel's 3 forms. Some things to be aware of as the DM. So Teos, take it away.
All right, so the first thing to understand is that Auriel cannot truly be killed. She is a goddess, so even though she has given up a lot of divinity to be doing her whole plan, she cannot be killed permanently. But they can defeat her temporarily by defeating her, and each time you do so, she changes another form, and she does this 3 times. So in succession, you must defeat a monstrous creature form that looks like sort of an owlbear, an elemental creature in humanoid form, and then a small elemental form that looks like an ice diamond. Mm-hmm. Defeat those 3 forms, and she is gone for a year, I think it is. Somewhere else.
Until the next solstice.
Yeah, next winter solstice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also important to note that if you kill one of her forms but don't finish the job, the next day she gets one of her forms back, and then the following day another. So unless you complete the kill, if you will, you're going to end up having to fight all 3 forms again. So this is something that you want to do, that the players are going to want to do all in one day.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that this is a monster. I love this. I actually really like this kind of design because it puts a lot of power in the DM if the DM wants to use it.
Yes.
The tactics that Oral has are the kind that I think really cool creatures should have. Like dragons should be able to fly away and strafe you. That's what makes them super dangerous, is that they can always just lift off into the air, and unless you're really high level, they can just kill you from afar. Come back and breathe every time until you're dead. In this same way, Oral truly could just escape. She can teleport away. You will not be able to find her, and she'll come back the next day, and this can go on forever. If she is smart, she's kind of unkillable, and it's up to you, the DM, to choose how to play it. There is some guidance. She is, as usual, kind of overconfident at first. And there's also, it says that she, it's okay if they can't defeat her. She will actually allow them to leave with their lives, so that she will tell them that she wants them to go and tell the 10 towns how dangerous she is, and that they will be defeated. Anyone who comes against her will be defeated. So the players can retreat, and that works because they do not actually, for the story to work and for progress to be achieved, they don't actually have to kill Oral. What they have to kill is Oral's rock, which is what she rides every day. And we talked about it last time, that this is a little dissatisfying. It's also not something that you hear about. So the players may not understand this. And I think a big key to having this Oral fight work well is that they must, through this fight, learn what they need to know to make their decisions, right? It can be a really cool tactical fight that plays out as a super huge challenge. They beat Oral. Later, they beat her rock. It's very obvious that the Rime has ended. But they also could get spanked. And if they know that it's okay to have been spanked, it won't necessarily be a letdown. It can be that kind of, I hate this villain. But they know that they did whatever you decide is required to end the Rime. And that can be defeating the rock. I would personally say that it's stealing the book, the codicil of white that's in the basement. I would say that is part of her ritual. I think it can work with the rock, but you just need to somehow explain that it's a magical rock infused with energies or something. And to be clear, rock, we mean the flying creature, not a boulder.
ROC, not ROCK.
Yeah, ROC. So that must be established up front, I think, for all of this scene to work. Anything else to add to that, Shawn?
Yeah, well, it's just what it comes down to, as Teos said it right at the start, is you as the DM have some choices to make, and you can make them to frustrate / delight your players, depending on what sort of story you're telling and what their threshold for having to go out of their way, maybe take a few sessions to deal with this rather than doing it all at once. Because as Teos said, as part of her lair actions, this whole island is basically her lair. So she knows the location and health of all creatures on the island. She can teleport to any location on the island. And she can communicate telepathically with any number of creatures on the island. So what you could do is, if your players are interested in this kind of story, they could fight her first form and defeat it. And she could teleport away. And maybe they think they're done. So they leave the island. And what I would do, to be honest, is for maybe a 10-day, the sun comes back. And everyone's happy and everyone is rejoicing. But on the 11th day, the sun doesn't come back. And the 12th and 13th days. And you realize something's wrong. Okay, let's go back to the island, or maybe do some research and learn that, she has 3 forms. So they go back and they have to then fight her. So make it sort of a puzzle that the players have to figure. And again, some players are going to hate that and not want. So if your players are like that, then just don't do that. Let them handle it all at once. But if they're more in for the long-term story, that could be a thing of interest. That they learn that she has 3 forms. Okay, now we're going to have to track her down, but she can teleport, so she could just teleport away. We need to find a way to find her when she teleports, so we can find her on the island and deal with the second form. Go ahead.
I just say, Another consideration here is story-wise, how does it feel for you and the players to defeat Oral now versus towards the end of the story? Because if she survives now, she can still be that named villain that we've thought about as being the end villain, but here we learn in Chapter 5 she's not. Well, she can be. And so maybe story-wise, the best payoff is they have what they think is an epic showdown, and they defeat one or two forms before they realize, oh man, we don't know how long this goes. Maybe they uncovered it's 3, maybe they don't know, but it changes to another form, and they're all out of hit points, and she invites them to run away, and they do, and then maybe they come back and sneak in, and they steal her book, and stop the Rime, but they know she's going to come for them. And again, there's this horror theme in this adventure that can be there. And leaning into that now could actually be one of the most satisfying parts of this adventure, is how you fought her, stole away with the things she needed for the Rime, and then she's coming to get you at some point.
Yeah.
And there will be that face-off at the end. And you love to have a villain that you couldn't defeat and hate them. Like, that's a thing that can be hard to do. This book gives you those ingredients if you want to cook that meal up.
Mm-hmm. And on the other side of the spectrum, the 3 forms themselves, they say that they are CR, was it 10, 9, 10, and then 11. Mm-hmm. So that's 3 very, very difficult fights for 7th level characters by the rules. But while she can do a lot of damage, her first form only has 95 hit points. For 7th level characters, especially ones that have not had a lot of combat to start with, if they find her directly, that's 1 round. Yeah. She's done. So she can't be surprised as a more immortal being. So at least you don't have to worry about surprise rounds. But if an issue goes wrong, she could be dead with an AC of 13 and 95 hit points. Easily dead in 1 round if you get power attacking. And what's the shooty feat that you get to subtract 5? Right. You know what I mean?
Yes. Plus 10 damage, minus 5 attack. Yep.
Yeah. So right there, you get some of those characters. Yeah. They'll make short work of that first form quite easily.
Yeah. So let's talk about her mechanically. As you mentioned, she cannot be surprised. Her statistics are all in Appendix C in this huge set of stat blocks. She has 3 layer actions. Knows the location and health of any creature on the island, plus any conditions. For example, whether something's vulnerable to cold. Mm-hmm. That's really tactically important. So if she, earlier on you cursed some of the characters for destroying statues in the garden and they have vulnerability to cold, she knows which ones. So keep that in mind. She can teleport to any location. She also knows their health, so she knows when a character is almost dead, right? She can teleport to any location as a layer action. The book suggests that you can make her tougher because she can teleport to the rooftop and have the rock attack. The rock is CR 11. Mm-hmm. It is just a straight-up beast with 248 hit points, and it deals basically 50 damage a round with 2 very accurate attacks. So that's not a bad beef to bust into the show. Of course, it is the thing that, per the book, allows her Rime to function. And she can telepathically communicate, so she can taunt people at will. Always nice to have.
That's always fun.
Yep. If you like the horror type elements, lean into that. Where are you now? Learn one of the characters' names and use it. Oh, great.
Yeah. Yep. So her having that voice in your head is always nasty.
First form is the Cold Crone. She is like a biped with the head of a snow owl, looks sort of owlberry type appearance. CR9, as you mentioned, only 95 hit points and an AC of 13. So she does not want to be right up with some super beefy tank. She can fly 60 feet, however. Mm-hmm. Also worth noting, she's vulnerable to Radiant, but she has True Sight, and all of her forms have True Sight and a really high passive perception. Mm-hmm. So she will almost always see someone who's hiding. She will see through all magical illusions, deceptions, etc. Mm-hmm. She has 2 legendary resistances to automatically make saves and magic resistance in this form. She can at will Misty Step, which lets her kind of spring type attack, and she can do Chromatic Orb Cold for 13 damage. Twice per day, she can do Ice Storm. So what does this all mean? Oh, and she also has her legendary attacks and Talon attacks. Her legendary action is to do a Talon attack for 10 damage. She can teleport 30, or she can spend 2 legendary actions and do her Touch of Frost attack, which does 13 cold and no reactions. That's not particularly impressive, but if you play it tactically, you can get a lot out of this form before they churn through the hit points. And the way I like to look at this is they are meant to defeat her. That's why she has an easy AC and low hit points, but she's softening them up here. And depending on how good your party is, you can just let them do it fairly easily, or you can be very tactical. And to be very tactical, the key here is fly. Drop Ice Storm, so that's continuously causing trouble in a small room on people. You're flying up above, so those melee people can't get to you easily. You can Misty Step to get away from any problems. And you can always teleport, so you actually don't have to die in this form. You can teleport away and then come back in the next time they're in a battle, because she will know when something's hit points drop, whether it's a character or a creature, and she can show up again and continue the fight. Chromatic Orb is super accurate, so if you have those high AC pain in the butt characters, you have some good chances against them. So I think you can do a lot of damage, especially with those 2 Ice Storms in this form. And if someone's vulnerable, all of these forms are really brutal.
Yeah, her second form is called the Brittle Maiden. It's a 10-foot tall woman made of ice and frost, with weapons created out of ice. So now the hit points in the armor class go up a bit, AC 16 and 136 hit points. And no flying, but vulnerability to fire. Sort of the same legendary resistances and magic resistances. The multi-attack is twice at +7 to hit for 16 damage, or hurl darts 3 times with a +7 to hit for an average of 8 points of damage. And Cone of Cold. Yay.
36 damage is delicious if you are vulnerable.
Yes. That's a lot. And she can create an ice method 3 times a day, so don't be afraid to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are also some ice methods around, including one which may be traveling with the party. Keep that one in mind. Yep. You can sacrifice the guide. She has this ice stasis, which is a recharge 5/6. That has a DC 21 charisma save, or they are trapped in the crystal. They are stunned while there. They take 21 cold at the start of each turn. You do get to continuously save to get out, or if the creature takes 9 hit points from fire, or the crystal takes 9 hit points from fire, then it ends it. So it's relatively easy to get out, but it's a great way to end concentration, or just get away from some situation that you need to do. Really nice way. She has 3 legendary attacks. You can do her legendary actions. You can do a weapon attack. Spend 2 to do an Ice Flurry to deal 5 damage to all within 30 feet and extinguish all flames. Or all 3 actions can cause Splinter, which causes an ice method to explode, and everybody within 10 takes 13 damage, or a half, depending on whether they make a DC 21 save. So that is a great option, especially if people are vulnerable. These exploding ice methods can really cash in. You can't do it 2 rounds in a row, but it still can be very nice to deal a bunch of damage. Tactically, what I like about this Brittle Maiden form is that one thing to keep in mind is when you go from form to form, she can reappear anywhere within 60 feet she chooses. So you can actually be in another room. Or to position yourself such that you start with that Cone of Cold and get everybody in it. Right? Make that Cone of Cold, because 36 damage is no joke when it happens twice, especially if you already Ice Stormed them twice. Or actually, she does 1 Cone of Cold, but 1 Cone of Cold, 2 Ice Storms is significant. And if there are any vulnerabilities, very significant. Also, starting your form, you could start outside of combat in another room, go get some ice methods, and then come in. Oh, we beat Oral. Wow, that was not that hard. Oh, look. Exploding ice methods, Cone of Cold. Again, that hits a lot. Ice stasis is just really cool, so I feel like you have to use it. And it's tactically great if you want to break concentration or put some problematic PC on hold after they power themselves up some way, and you just go, putting you on ice. So that's pretty fun. I like this form a good bit.
Yep. And then the third form is called Winter's Womb, or the Queen of Frozen Tears. It's a 3-foot diameter ice diamond containing Oral's Divine Spark. This CR11 creature has an AC of 19 and 136 hit points, a fly speed of 30, and it's vulnerable to thunder. So each one has been vulnerable. The first was radiant, even though we didn't mention that. The second was fire. The third is thunder. Has blind sight and true sight and a passive perception of 26 as before. Legendary resistance once per day and magic resistance as well. So with the aura of this, anyone within 10 feet takes 10 cold at the start of her turns. This is significant.
Juicy.
Right?
I love auras.
Yeah. Yep. So this is now turning into something that could be very deadly, especially if you are playing with players that don't really optimize. So at this point, if they're not just mowing her forms down, you may want to think of a good exit strategy of allowing the players or their characters a way out. Whether
Shawn,
it's yeah.
How would you do that? So let's say I'm round 2 in my third form, and you see my character's about to die, and the other character's already down. How do you handle it? Do you just tell them, "Hey, you're over your head"? Do you have them make checks? What do you like?
It's hard to do that. It's hard to. Well, the first thing you have to do is get a feel for the players, because what's perfect for one player is just going to infuriate another player. So you want to get a feel for what your players would want. I would have something happen where she stopped for a round, showed physical pain. Something's happening. Give them the chance to take stock, heal someone who's dying, and then use that delay as a clue that something's wrong, and they maybe can't use it now, but use it later. Now I don't know what that would be.
I mean, one thing is she can just simply say, "You're defeated,"
right?
And she could tell all of the 10 towns that I have spared you, but could have easily claimed you, and none should come challenge me in my domain, and just teleport away. She could actually just do that, right, and leave them there stunned, like, "Oh man, we were getting spanked by her." I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and you could also do sort of a curse.
I like that.
Where she does exactly that, and she's like, "All right, you are now under my authority. Go speak the word of Ariel, and if they don't, they lose a hit point per day or something. Yeah. If they don't say praise Ariel in front of at least 10 people once a day." And they don't have to love her, right? They don't have to actually become thralls of her, but it's something that she's divine, right? She's immortal. I like that. And that gives them an impetus then to go back and defeat her later.
Yeah, that's neat. So keep in mind some exit strategy. I think that's a really good thing to do. Let's quickly go into the tactics. This is the form in which you do want to close. It's the opposite of the first form where you want to fly above and drop some ice storms. Here, you get Blizzard Veil, a magical obscuring blizzard, 30 feet, which is centered on herself, does require concentration. And this is a lot like magical darkness. We talked about darkness 2 episodes ago. It's great if the party has things like really powerful sneak attack, if they can actually somehow hide from her passive perception 26, or if they have ways to get advantage consistently. Now they can't get those things. And that gives her a more even ground. Plus, she has true sight and blind sight, so she's not affected. She can see you through this.
Right.
The other thing is this combines with her aura. So it's a beautiful cinematic thing where she is dealing 10 cold to everybody within 10 feet, and they can't see within this blizzard. It's really cinematic. She can spend 2 legendary action to intensify the aura to increase the damage from 10 to 20 at the start of everyone's turns. Oh man, I love that. She also can do 2 actions for blinding gleam. Everybody within 10 feet who sees her have to make a DC 17 wisdom save or be blind for 1 minute. Repeat save at the end of your turns. So that's awesome. Off turn, which is how legendary actions are used, if the blizzard is dropped. So someone breaks her concentration, the blizzard's gone, the aura is still up, but the blizzard's gone. hey, she can just spend this to blind at least most of people or a good number of the people in the party so that she's back to that situation. And then later she can bring the veil back up. And the veil is an action to set up, so she can it's not rechargeable. She can just do it again and again. Yeah. So here, what you want to do is you want to start close to them. She can, of course, gather allies if she wants, choose a better time to fight. But whenever she goes into it, she gets close to the PCs. The Blizzard's Veil is giving her defensive capabilities. Blinding Gleam if the Blizzard drops, and make sure that Aura hits as many PCs as possible. Pump it up with Intensify Aura. Her Polar Ray, which is her default range spell attack, is plus 13 to hit, so it's very accurate, and it deals 14 cold, and she can do it twice. That is not bad, for a use of her actions when she's not re-upping that aura. So this is pretty strong. Again, if you have vulnerability, very strong. If you have a super powerful party, make sure they got that vulnerability via curse, because that's going to be an equalizer. And she can teleport at any time when she's not liking things. So very hard to defeat all three of these forms if you want that to be the way that it's set up.
Yeah. And the last thought I had on this was, in this day and age, a lot of us are playing in smaller chunks because we're playing online and we might not have as much time as we normally do. So if your default session is only an hour or only 2 hours, you may need that full time to run this combat with all three forms. So don't, if you don't like stopping in the middle of a combat, keep that in mind, because this could go on for a while, especially if you use the teleporting and sort of staying out of their way.
And this is a combat, we've said this in a number of ways, but it's worth saying it again. Really think about what your party has enjoyed about this adventure, what kind of elements and style they've enjoyed, how they're feeling about this, because defeating her first form and then just hearing her laughter echo throughout the place, and you don't know where she is, and she communicates with you telepathically here and there. Did you kill me? Man, that could really be cool. Yeah. And then you face her second form, but she teleports again and then comes back and hits you. It could be like an alien movie, right? So there's a lot of ways, depending what your players are liking and reacting to, that you can give them a really neat feel with this. And they do not need to defeat her. She could be the villain that's going to be at the end. So it's up to you how to play it.
Yep. But don't take our word for it.
No.
There are actually 2 articles out there that specifically talk about guidance on running or reel, I believe.
Yeah,
one is by
James
the
Hake,
aforementioned James Hake. Yeah,
before he started his farming career.
Yeah, he wrote about it on D&D Beyond. So there's a link in our show notes, or you can just go to D&D Beyond and look for the How to Play Auriel the Frost Maiden Like a Goddess article. And our friend PowerScore RPG also wrote about it on the blog. It's the campaign20xx.blogspot.com. PowerScore talks about a guide to running Auriel. So you have some options out there.
And PowerScore's guide is heavy on the history and appearances. So if you really want to think about what's her mentality, that's where to go. It's less about tactics in the battle, but really about understanding all about her history, the different books, what's her mindset, her relationships to other gods, why she's here. So it's really neat background premise stuff.
Excellent. So that is it for Chapter 5. Next, we will talk about Chapter 6, The Caves of Hunger, but that is for another week. So thank you, Mr. ARCADIA, for your expertise on all of that.
Thanks, Shawn.
And thank you, listeners, for putting up with us for yet another episode of Mastering Dungeons. And thank you to our patrons as well. If you would like to be a patron of the show, you can go to patreon.com/MMP. Teos, where can people find you on social media?
I am on Twitter at AlphaStream, and you can find my blog at alphastream.org. The latest post is on how to set up your audio and video.
Ooh, I could probably use that. You can find me on Twitter at Sean Merwin, or on the forums at forums.misdirectedmark.com. And you can also follow the podcast Twitter at MasteringDND. Mastering Dungeons is a Misdirected Mark production, the media arm of Encoded Designs. So, Teos, what do you think we should do now?
We should retreat. Auriel is a badass.
Yeah, we're not killing that monster anytime soon.